Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, we're going to be talking about adoption as I am joined by Lane Igoudin. Lane has a book out. He has written extensively about adoption. He's been all over the place, on different podcasts, on NBC, just all over the place talking about adoption. So we're going to be talking to him about that and why he's so passionate about it. So Lane, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for bringing me on, Curtis. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Okay. I would describe myself as a writer, as a professor, but most importantly, as a father, as a dad. That pretty much sums up my identity, I think. So my husband and I have adopted two kids from foster care here in Los Angeles. And that's the subject of my book. And I guess that's what we'll be talking about. I also teach. I teach English as a second language and linguistics at Los Angeles City College. And I've been there 20 years now. And most importantly, like I said, I'm the father to two kids who at the time were a newborn and a 1-year-old. And now they are wonderful young ladies who are 18 and 20.
All right. So what made you want to get into adoption or to adopt?
Well, what's interesting is that I always saw myself as a future dad, and I had this vision of who I was going to be in my adult life. So I saw myself as a father. And when my partner and I met, which was almost 28 years ago, I told him about that. And at that time, he wasn't really ready for it, but we got into the process later. And at the time when we entered the process, there were multiple routes available to us to bring kids into our family. Surrogacy was one. Then international adoption was another one, and then private adoption when you adopt from usually a birth mother who's not planning to keep the child, so she's looking for a family to place the child with, and finally the foster adoption. And the foster adoption as a route available to gay individuals or couples like we were only became available in some states. I would say mostly, well, in some states in the mid to late 1990s. So at the time when we entered the process, which was 2004, 2005, we were pretty much at the at the front of the first generation of I would say out gay families, and we were still very much under the radar because at that time, states like, for example, California, where we were living, they would place children with a gay man or a gay couple, but they wouldn't really be very vocal about it. So we were kind of flying under the radar. But as our community was struggling to gain equal rights, right, including the right not to be discriminated at work and also the right to same-sex marriage, the word about gay families started to pop out in the media, and so we kind of started to come out of the background and into the national spotlight. So the time when we were going through the adoptions and raising our kids was also the time when we were very active in the struggle for equal rights, which was early, like 2005 to 2010. So yeah, that's what my memoir is about. And so the foster adoption, let me tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah, because I
Why?
was gonna ask you
Yeah.
what did you wish you knew about it before you started the process? So go ahead.
Right. So we chose to go the foster adoption route because we really wanted to open our home to a child or two from our community. We live in Greater Los Angeles, and at that time, and to this day, Los Angeles has the largest foster care system in the country. So at that time, we're talking about 2004, 2005, there were anywhere between 30 and 35,000 kids who needed a home. And we thought, why should we go abroad and look for a child there when there are children down the street that need a home? So that's how we went into the process. Because to be honest, both my partner Jonathan and myself, we came from pretty humble backgrounds. Jonathan is African American, and he grew up on a farm in Central Valley of California, in a very large family. And so we're talking about, rural upbringing. And myself, I came here as a refugee with my family from the Soviet Union. So we also started kind of at the bottom. So we thought, why, we didn't want to go how can I put it? We wanted to, well, we knew the struggle, we knew the struggle that many people experience, and we wanted to bring a couple of kids into our home and give them a good place. So that's why we decided to go into foster adoption. And when we went in, we thought, okay, well, we'll just kind of go through the certification, home study, and have a child or two, and things will just kind of work out. And the more we got into the process, the more things began to sort of go wrong. And that's when I decided that I should start to document it and write down things as they were and share the story, whatever the outcome would be. I should really share that story. So that's how I ended up writing this book, A Family Maybe.
Wow. How
Um,
did the adoptions affect the relationship between you and your partner?
what's interesting, I think, is it brought us closer together, even though we went through 3 years of how can I put it nicely, hell. um, 3 years of extreme uncertainty. When you're raising children, like our younger daughter, she was a newborn, and then they tell her that she won't be with you next week, and so we almost lost her, 4 times, to the system, and things like that is just heartbreaking, and you think it's going to, rip your family apart. But instead, I think it brought us together because it was only the two of us, John and me. We didn't have like a large family to support us. It's just the two of us, and also the network of friends in the neighborhood that we build up, kind of, to help us and help them as well. So we had to rely on each other and work as kind of two hands, 24/7. And so that really brought us together. But one thing that I learned is about it is not to um, is to remember to take care of your partner, because basically I would say the core of our family is my partner and me. This is where it starts, and that's where it should be when the process is over. So basically, no matter what parenting will put you through, you must do all you can to stay together. So I've seen families split by the uncertainties of the adoption process and the power struggles over parenting strategies and things like that. So I realized I really need to keep an eye on my partner. I need to love him more. I need to give him more, and I should never take him for granted. And I think maybe some of that helped us to stay together as well. So this was one of the takeaways um, from from our experience. And maybe another one, if I could also share with you, is that when you go into something as unpredictable as adopting from a foster care system, you need to expect the unexpected. Basically, you need to learn about the system and arm yourself with resources because it's a very complex process with multiple parties involved in the child's present and future. There are birth families, birth parents, social workers, court-appointed attorneys, the judge, And everybody's needs and responsibilities and they'll fluctuate, and that makes the outcome very unpredictable. So just to give you an idea, some of the uncertainties that we met along the way were that the birth parent may or may not have the ability to parent the child, or a known or previously unknown biological relative could step forward and to claim the child and receive preference over you. You may discover that the child has deeper psychological or physical needs because of the trauma from previous placements. Or the child's attorney and social workers that you've grown to rely on may suddenly disappear or be replaced by a new person who knows nothing about the case. So all of that in some shape or form happened in our process. So what you do is you need to really develop knowledge about the system, and you can learn from books, like mine, but not necessarily. Um, Websites, social media groups, experts, adoptive parents in your community, reach out, because people will share their experiences, and that will give you the understanding and tools that you need to address the issues that will arise.
Let's take a quick break.
Okay, everybody, it's Michael E. Cullen II.
And I'm Sesame and Carta from the All Too Real 2 podcast. We're passionate about movies, TV, and pretty much all things pop culture.
Dive into the chaos of failed sitcoms, direct-to-video sequels, and the quirky realms of cinema and TV.
Join us every Thursday for your dose of All Too Real 2 entertainment.
We'll guide you through debates like whether Howard the Duck qualifies as a superhero.
Ponder if Larry the Cable Guy could be the new Rock or Schwarzenegger.
Discover if some shows and movies should have stayed in the cutting room.
Ever heard of a sitcom featuring that dictator with the funny mustache? Well, we watched it.
We're dedicated to unraveling the peculiarities of pop culture, sometimes with awesome guests.
So, if you're into the eccentric world of pop culture,
listen and subscribe to All Too Real 2.
Available wherever you find podcasts
and on Age of Radio.
Well, talk about the process when you went through it in the early 2000s. Like, how has the process, the adoption process changed from now to then, for better or worse, for as far as adoptions?
Um, in some ways, first of all, fundamentally, it hasn't changed. Fundamentally, the primary responsibility of the Children's Court is to reunite uh, the birth families with their children. It's only in the situation when it's not possible that what's called a concurrent track, which is long-term foster care, but preferably adoption, kind of comes in, and which is what we were, in the situation of our kids. In the long run, they couldn't go back to their families for various reasons, which I described in my book. So we the ones who actually raised them became their legal family. So in that sense, the process hasn't changed much. It's still the same parties in the court. The foster adoptive parents are still being sort of kept outside, for the most part, outside of the court cases. In some ways, I think it's gotten maybe even harder, because I think I know that um, there's now even more preference, and kind of like the foster care is being treated, especially group homes are being treated as sort of like definitely not the desirable option. And I personally disagree with that, because I believe that families that actually raise the children, whatever they are, the extended, birth families, grandparents, or caretakers like us, should be as respected and honored, and in the process as everyone else, and should be as much as part of the process as everyone else. And in our experience, we weren't. When we applied to be considered de facto parents, which means that it will give us the right to be present in the courtroom and help the court make the decisions about the kids that we were raising, we were thrown out. like literally in 3 minutes. So we were kept outside the entire process for as we were raising the kids, from week after week, month after month, year after year. And so that should not be happening. That should not be happening. I think the birth family should still have all the rights that they still do, but also the adoptive family should be given more prominence in the process. Because honestly, people usually ask, so how did things change in your family once the court decreed, you to be adoptive parents? And I said, nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing changed in our relations with our kids from the day before a judge in some courtroom 20 miles away decided to grant us the adoptive parent status to the next day. We're still the same adults that were raising those two beautiful girls the day before and the day after. So, this whole dilemma between sort of the legal side of things and the human side of things is something that really came, to the front of our story. Nothing has changed.
Well, how your kids doing today?
Well, as I mentioned before, they are young women now. And let me tell you, as you go through parenting, like just when you sort of get something down, let's say preteens or teenagers, you know, they're on to the next phase of their development, and you try to catch up with them. So now now we're learning how to parent adult children, adult women, I should say, who have boyfriends, and the boyfriends have families, and all that. So that's our new reality. But they're wonderful. They're absolutely wonderful. Our younger daughter is attending college, and actually, because it's not too far from where we live, she takes the train into town, and as we speak, actually, my husband is on the way to pick her up from the train station. So she'll be with us for the weekend. And then her sister, who lives nearby, and we're supporting her and helping her sort of to establish herself independently as well. So she'll be joining us for dinner tomorrow night. And so we get together once or twice a month. So we're still very much a close-knit family. And we were really blessed. We were really blessed. Despite all the difficulties that we've gone through, we are really blessed to have our family. And I will tell anyone, don't be turned off by the difficulties that you may face, because it's worth it. It's worth it.
Absolutely. Well, tell us, about your book, like why you decided to write it, and what it was like, writing a book, filled with social and political issues such as, LGB and all that stuff like that.
Well, I didn't, professionally, I'm trained as a linguist. I teach language, I speak multiple languages, and so I never planned to write this book. But what happened was that as things began to open up in some very unexpected ways and not very positive ways, I decided to document it. And the one thing that really drove me, I would say, that really motivated me to write this book in the end was I would say anger at the way we were treated, because we were facing this double stigma of being foster adoptive parents, excluded from the process, excluded from the decision making about the kids that we were raising. And at the same time, we had the second stigma of being a gay couple. And at that time, we had no rights. We couldn't get married. So we were two unrelated adults raising two related children. Okay. And we lived with this kind of absurd situation for years. And even when we got married in the state of California in 2008, then 5 months later, our marriage, same-sex marriage, became illegal again in the state of California. So we were kind of stuck in the limbo for the next 8 years until it became legal in the whole country. So, yeah, so there was a lot of anger and I'm like, you know what? I really need to tell our story, because, people really need to know what it's like. So, but to be honest, I kept, I had like boxes. I would throw like all the court orders and faxes and all that into it. And I kept a diary, and I kept all the faxes and emails that went out. But once we were done with the process, I just couldn't face writing it. So it took me, I would say, another 4 years to even begin to write about it, and then another 8 years to complete the draft. So it was a long process. It was a long process because you're trying to tell the story being as authentic as you could be, but also you're not the person that you were then, and you begin to look at things a little bit differently. You begin to understand things a little bit differently. Let me just give you one example. So as we were going through the process, I was very I would say upset. I was very disappointed with the way, the judge was acting in the case of our kids. I felt that she wasn't really acting in our children's best interests. However, like I started to look more into it, and I learned that these children court judges are supposed to have like about 160 cases as their caseload. Some of them in our state handle up to 600 cases. They're like beyond overburdened. And so are the social workers. The amount of cases that they handle is unimaginable. And so, I mean, the system is really stretched and overburdened, and there's just so much I can sort of hold, I can blame the system when the system is so underfunded and overstretched. So it's more complex than people might think. Because everybody wants the best, but ultimately there's just so much they can do. And in the end what happens is who suffers, the children and the families that raise them. So that's what drove me to write the book. But again, I don't want I want I want this experience because the book ends with adoptions of the kids, and with kind of brings the reader up to where we are now. And so we have a very, I would say, happy ending. So this is why I'm telling you, no matter what you read about there, it's worth it. It's worth it.
Absolutely. Well, tell us about any current or upcoming projects that you're working on that people need to be aware of.
Um, well, um, well, my book came out last year. It came out last February, and last year I really focused on the book tour. I talked about the book, and I had a book tour with 12 stops from Portland, where the press is. It's at Portland State University, down here to Los Angeles, Long Beach, Palm Springs, and all the way down to Mexico City. So I had these book talks last year, which I'm continuing to speak more about my book, but this year I'm focusing more on opportunities to reach out the audiences which are outside of California, for example, yourself, Curtis, and I'm very thankful to you for bringing me on, so I can speak to the people that wouldn't be able to, learn about our journey otherwise. So I'm very active right now on podcasts. Some of the podcasts are also affiliated with radio stations, and I'm also writing quite a bit, and I have a lot of interest in faith and spiritual growth. And I'll tell you, I am a person of faith, and we raised our kids in the Jewish tradition, and I'm pretty traditional, actually, I should say. And so the intersection of parenting and faith, parenting and spirituality, mindful parenting, those are the things that I've been writing quite a lot on. And so if somebody is interested in that, I would encourage them to look up my website, which is laneigoudin.com, because I've been publishing quite a bit, and I also publish this free newsletter on mindfulness, on spiritual mindfulness, called Blessing the Sea. And so if anybody is interested, I would encourage them to check out my website, and if take a look at the newsletter. If you would like to get it, just sign up, and I'll be happy to add you to the mailing list. I have a couple hundred people subscribing to it. So like I said, this is just something that really is central to me these days. And so besides talking about adoptive parenting and foster care, I also write about spirituality and mindful parenting as well.
All right. Well, you just answered my next question. Throw out your contact info. So that's laneigoudin.com. So close us out with
Or
some.
if anyone is interested, they can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Lane Igoudin. So
Absolutely.
shoot me an email, or or a post, DM, whatever they call it these days. SMS? No, it's not SMS. It's a messenger, whatever it is. Just reach out. Reach out. I'll be happy to hear from you.
Right. So close us out with some final thoughts. Maybe if that was something I forgot to talk about that you would like to touch on, or any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
I would say that if you are parenting, and this is something that I also learned later, not having to do with a foster adoption, but with parenting, just I try to enjoy being a parent despite all the challenges of raising kids, especially like in our case, raising two daughters. I'm thinking about making this T-shirt which says "I survived my daughter's adolescence." Okay, so what helped me was maybe becoming more mindful about it. Things like pausing to notice those parenting moments, and kind of to be there as I'm when I am with my child, when they were little, when they're walking them to school or shopping for new sneakers or being with them on the playground. But now it's like more like driving with them or FaceTiming them. Really focus on who they are, where they are, and also you know what else, learning from them. I think of my kids as my spiritual teachers in many ways. For example, I remember my daughter when she was a teen, she said once, like, we were talking about, I was trying to figure out something was going on, and she was very emotional about it. And finally she blurted out, she said, "You don't understand what I'm going through." And instead of reacting to that, I told her, "You know what? You're right. I don't understand what you're going through. Why don't you tell me? Teach me so I can help you, so I can understand you and I can help you." So I'm trying to raise my kids with that sort of, while being aware of that, trying to learn from them, trying to learn from this experience. So that's probably my parting thought.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, LaneIgoudin.com. Y'all make sure you check out the book, follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. Jump on your favorite
Oh,
podcast.
and I would also add that you can find my book on Amazon Bookshop, wherever. It's called A Family Maybe. But if you'd like me to sign it for you, you can find it on my website and you can just get it there. And I'll be very happy to send it to you or to whoever you would like.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. So LaneIgoudin.com. Jump on your favorite podcast app. Check out the show. Follow us. Leave us a review. Share. If you have any guest or suggestion topics, Curtis Jackson 1978 at att.net is the place to send them. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. Lane, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Curtis. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.